does it take to go from being the kind of person who shies away from leadership, who is hesitant to take up a role of significant responsibility, to being the kind of person who ends up heading a national movement on mental health? Well, that's me. I was the kind of person who saw myself as the assistant. I was very comfortable in that place. I was comfortable being beside the person in charge, or maybe just behind the person in charge. And I saw myself as like the second in command to the captain of the ship. But I didn't see myself as the person who would be at the front. I was afraid of that. So why did I develop that image of myself as someone who wouldn't be able to take up a leadership role? Well, I suppose I think back to the times when I was a kid and I was at home. You know, I had a father who was a big, stocky, big, booming voiced man. And he, as a law professor, he was used to commanding the attention of a lecture hall. He was used to being the center of attention in many social situations. And I can remember that just for fun, he used to teach cooking classes in our house to some of his students. So he would invite a group of students over to our country kitchen, and he would start showing them how to do fine French cooking, or one year he did medieval cookery. And in those occasions, sometimes as he was directing everybody around the kitchen, you know, you chop the tomatoes and, you chop up and slice up the meat. Every once in a while, he would turn to me and he would say, Shari, why don't you show them how to peel a tomato by boiling it in water for 12 seconds? Why don't you show them how to separate the whites from the yolks of an egg? And in those moments, I felt so proud and I knew my place. My place was recognized by everyone in the room as his assistant. So I suppose I developed that kind of identity and I felt very comfortable in those kinds of roles. I was wanting always to be the one who was supporting the leader. I had knowledge, I had skills, but I wanted to use those in a way a little bit to the side, a little bit on the sidelines. Then there was another thing in my experience that affected my sense of whether I was capable of leadership. Because it wasn't just that I wanted to step back from the center, it was also that I was afraid. I was afraid of taking up the role of responsibility and of being the one that everyone else would look to on decision-making in tough times. So why was that? Well, I think that I was affected a lot by the fact that I experienced panic attacks from the time I was 16. I've had panic attacks throughout my whole life since then. Not every day, very occasionally these days. But in those moments when I get a panic attack, suddenly I can feel completely unable to make even the tiniest decision. I can't decide whether I want to eat something or not eat something, or what might make me feel better. I don't know whether I want to stay on the sofa or go to my room or go out for a walk. I can't make even the smallest decision. And I suppose those kinds of experiences made me think I wouldn't be able to cope with a position of significant responsibility where I had to be able to make tough decisions in times of crisis. So when the time came for the role of the head of this national coalition on mental health, the first time around in 2010, I didn't go for the role. I had the skills, I had the passion for the issue, I had the personal experience, I had the knowledge, I had a PhD in social justice. But I told my friends, I told my family, I told my husband, no, that's not for me. I never want to be in that hot seat. I never want to be the one who's in charge. So I took up the role of kind of, assistant in that organization. and I was the head of policy. I was the policy officer for the organization. But there was something else that was in me that somebody else saw. And that was the desire to have my voice heard, to fulfill my potential. You know, all those years that my father's voice was filling our house, that his voice was taking up the space, I also wanted my voice to be heard. I wanted my views to be listened to. I wanted my perspective to count. And I was lucky that in that mental health coalition, someone else saw that in me. The CEO at that time, she saw that I had that potential, and she started nurturing me into leadership. She would give me little opportunities to be the one at the forefront. She would ask me to do a radio interview, and she'd say to me, Shari, you do this interview because you know the subject better than I do. You'll do a better job than I will do. And that was enormously encouraging. And she would ask me to go in front of the Parliament, in front of the Parliamentary Committee on Health, and represent the whole organization there and our positions, and say, you know, you're the one who should be able to respond to the firing line, to all the questions that will come at you. And those opportunities helped me to see myself and begin to see myself in a new way. But there was another, ironically, a very small opportunity that really made the difference. And that was when she would go on annual leave. And when Orla went on holiday, she asked me to be in charge. Sure, it was only a week, 2 weeks at a time. But in those periods, I felt the mantle of responsibility. I really did. I worried that I had to be able to handle anything that came up. And yet I discovered that I could. I discovered that when things needed to be decided on, I was able to do it. So that the next time around, the job of the head of mental health reform came up, I had a completely different view of myself. I had a deep sense that I was able to be that leader. And I put myself forward for the job. I contacted the chairperson and I said, I would like to take this on. I would like to take on this challenge. And he gave me that opportunity. I went on to lead that coalition for 6 years. And at first I was terrified. At first I was like a bunny in headlights. Honestly, I worried every day about whether I could do it. But every single day that I showed up to that desk, I discovered that I was able to handle that role. And over time, I realized that with the help of others, that I could do it. That by seeking out mentorship and asking other CEOs who navigated similar situations, that I could learn how to navigate those difficult times. And most importantly, I learned that I could be myself in that role, that I could be honest with my team and honest with my board, and acknowledge that, yes, I had difficult times myself, and that sometimes I needed a bit of cushion, sometimes I needed a bit of extra planning. But we went on to success. We doubled our income during my tenure. We doubled our membership. We went on to become the national go-to voice on mental health in Ireland. And we achieved real change for people who go through times of mental distress. We achieved huge investment in the public mental health services and hundreds more staff for those services. And we got a national program that helps people with severe mental health difficulties who might never get a chance to be in a job, to become employed. So, was it worth it? Would I bother? Absolutely. I mean, it was risky. But I think that in the times that we live in, with the challenges that we face, we cannot afford to have any leaders sitting on the sidelines. So if there's someone out there who's a leader and who sees someone on your team that's like me, like I was, I hope you'll give them those micro opportunities to try out leadership. And if you're me, If you're that person who thinks that can't possibly be me in that hot seat, I hope you'll take up those micro opportunities to try on leadership, because you really might find you're capable of much more than you realize.